Hey, all Heretic here. Today in the Battlegrounds, we're going to be talking about Quilboar. We're going to talk about the various minions, spells, abilities, all the things we can do to make Quilboar work. So without any hesitation, let's jump right into it. And we have to talk about what makes Quilboar unique. Blood gems. Blood gems are a spell. Mind you, this is a spell, so remember that's important for a lot of other triggers that'll happen with Quilboars or a lot of other tribes for that matter. That's an important interaction. But baseline, this is a 1/1 buff you can apply to your minions on your board or in your shop. Also, later, there are a lot of ways to increase the attack and health of these blood gems. So while they might start as a humble 1/1, getting them to a 20/20 is not unheard of and can get much higher if you're lucky. So definitely, blood gems are something you have to pay attention to, especially playing Quilboar. The nice thing about it is there's a lot of ways to generate blood gems. We have battle cries, we have death rattles, we just have combat triggers that happen that will apply them directly to minions. There's a lot of ways that we can get more and more blood gems. In fact, there are very easy times where you will easily fill your hand with 10 blood gems. That's not a difficult thing to do later in the game you get. Also, there's spells later we'll get into that can move blood gems, so you're not stuck with them on a minion you may or may not want them on. So just remember, blood gems are incredibly important to the Quilboar tribe. When to use them, how to use them, all these things are important. Well, now that we know about blood gems, let's talk about the minions. Just remember here, we're not going to talk about minions that are just stats. If they don't do anything special, if they don't have any cool abilities, we're going to skip them. We only care about ones that do fun stuff. And any big changes that happen in patches going forward will be listed in the comments below here. So make sure you check back to see if there's something you're curious about. We'll either go into it in the comments and tell you more about it, or I'll direct you to a video where we do more of an in-depth dive. And we're going to start off on tier 2 with the generous Geomancer for you Duos fans out there. This is a tier 2 1/1 Quilboar death rattle. You and your team may each get a blood gem. It's a blood gem for both of you. That's decent tempo. Issue is it's a tier 2 minion and it's only a 1/1, which feels really bad. But long term, if you get this early enough, or especially a pair of them, you really can get a lot of stats from this quick. It's not giving just you a blood gem, it's your teammate also every time it dies. It's a 1/1, it's gonna die. And if you can get 2 of these especially, you could really get a lot of long-term value out of this, figuring it's gonna sit on your board for at least 6-7 turns, maybe 5 if you're lucky because you start to do well. That's not bad value for a tier 2 giving you those buffs every turn. Next, we have a tier 2 2/3 Prophet of the Boar. Now this is neutral, but only in Quilboar lobbies. This is taunt. After you play a Quilboar, get a blood gem. This is really easy blood gem generation. Just have a Prophet of the Boar, maybe 2, and every time you play a Quilboar, there you go, more free blood gems. The minion you're playing might give you a blood gem, but this guy's also going to give you blood gems for every one you play. So really good value. If you're thinking about Quilboar or anything, this is just good tempo. You cycle them here and there, it gives you some blood gems, good to go. Next, we have the Tough Tusk. This 5/3 Quilboar is after a blood gem is played on this, gain Divine Shield until next turn. This especially paired with Prophet of the Boar. If you already have a Prophet of the Boar, slap this thing down, immediately has Divine Shield, which means, because you're going to put that blood gem on it to get Divine Shield, it's immediately going to get a buff. So it's not really a 5/3, especially if you're playing it with a Prophet of the Boar, it's a 6/4. And it's going to keep going up every time you apply a blood gem to it, so it gains Divine Shield, because it only lasts until next turn. Now, mind you, it is permanent once it's gold, but not going to be gold for a little while, so save those blood gems, make sure it has Divine Shield. Moving up to tier 3, we have an interesting collection of characters. First, we have the Bristling Buffoon. This 3/4 Quilboar is whenever this takes damage, get a blood gem 3 times per combat. Now, if you get this early enough, this is really good. Now you're saying, but it's a 3/4 at tier 3, I can do a little better stats. And I'm like, well, you're not really wrong, but you're gonna get 1, 2, 3 blood gems a combat. If you get none, that means this guy never got hit, which means you won the combat. Hooray. If you get 3 and you lost the combat and you took 15 damage, well, at least you got 3 blood gems for your trouble and you didn't just take 15 damage. Obviously, as you're buffing blood gems, you're gonna get more value out of this. So it's not a bad investment at all. I really like Bristling Buffoon early. Late in the game, this is definitely a minion you want to cut. But through the early and mid game, this is a really solid Quilboar. Regardless of what you're playing, it's just good stats. Mangled Bandit is a 3/3 Quilboar that at the start of your turn, discard a spell to get 3 blood gems. Now, remember earlier when I mentioned blood gems are spells. That means you don't have to discard a tavern spell or a coin or anything like that. Just hold a blood gem in your hand. At start of combat, you're going to discard that one and you're going to get 3 more. Now, it's important to remember that it is random, the spell that you discard. So if you have tavern spells and you have blood gems, it's a coin flip on which one's going to get discarded. So try to narrow down as few tavern spells you're holding while you have a card like this in play. But if you can live with the risk, go for it. Early important minions for Quilboar, and that is the Moonbacon Jazzer. This 2/5 Quilboar is Battle Cry. Your blood gems have an extra +1 health this game. That means going forward, from the moment you play this, every single blood gem you play will give an additional 1 health. So they're a 1/2 buff base now. Now, mind you, do you have a Bran? Do you have a Rylak? Do you have a Draconic Death Scale? There's a lot of different ways to trigger battle cries. Dreamer's Embrace. Use that with this minion, trigger it as much as you can, and suddenly your blood gems can be giving you a lot of stats. Now, mind you, it's very frustrating when you play the entire game and your blood gems give, say, 115. I've been there. And you've got Felboar with hundreds and hundreds of health and like 20 attack. Very annoying. Funny though, and you can win a lot of fights against certain tribes with it, but you're definitely going to need to find the other end of the spectrum here, and that is the Prickly Piper. This is a 5/1 Quilboar Death Rattle. Blood gems give an extra +1 attack this game. That means you're already given, if you've got a Moonbacon, a 1/2 buff. Well, every time Prickly Piper dies, now they're going to give an additional 1 attack, so now a 2/2 buff. 3 combats go by, +3 attack. You have a Monstrous Macaw, you could trigger it with that. You have a Titus Rivendare, double the value. There's a lot of ways you can get extra value out of the Prickly Piper early, and it's not as important as it once was, these 2 cards. It used to be Moonbacon Jazzer, Prickly Piper, you needed them on your board the entire game, or just constantly appearing in the case of the Jazzer. We're going to get into it later, but now there's cards that can do it even better. At Tavern Tier 4, we've got a bunch more. We've got the Banner Boar. This 3/5 Quilboar is at the end of your turn, play a blood gem on adjacent minions. So it's got a 3/5 stat line, not bad, and it's going to buff the minion to the left and the right every single turn for a blood gem. Now, if your blood gems are 1/1, that doesn't seem great. Have you buffed your blood gems a little bit? Is it a 5/5 buff? Is it a 3/2 buff? And all of a sudden, this 3/5 represents 6/4 in additional stats. It's good value. It's an end to turn effect. Drakari Enchanter doubles the number of times it's going to apply that. The Drakari Enchanter that you're telling me is a 1/5. Put him next to the Banner Boar. That, or use him as a bumper minion. Put him in your slot number 1. Let him knock divine shields off things. Have fun. Gem Smuggler is coming up in the next slot. That is a 3/4 Quilboar Battle Cry. Play a blood gem on all your other minions. So it won't buff itself, but it'll buff the other 6 minions on your board, regardless of their tribe. Just blood gems and all of them. Once again, 1/1 blood gems, not great. Ooh, 10/5 blood gems? Phenomenal. Cycle that thing. Trigger all the battle cries you can with this thing. We've gone over all the plethora of battle cry stuff to trigger it with. Run all that again. Knock it all out. Have a good time. Very important Quilboar up next. Geomagus Roogug. This 4/6 Quilboar, Divine Shield. Whenever a blood gem is played on this, play a blood gem on a different friendly minion. Anytime a blood gem is played on this, it will then shoot to one of your other minions completely randomly another blood gem. Even if it's a 1/1 buff, that's really a 2/2 buff. Oh, it's a 4/4 buff? Now it's an 8/8 buff because you're getting the 4/4 on the Geomagus, and then he's randomly hitting one of your other minions. Try to make sure that you hold all of your blood gems until only the minions you want to keep are on the board. Then maybe hold one last card to play in your hand, play all your blood gems on the Geomagus, then play that very last card. Otherwise, inevitably, what's going to happen is you're going to play that random card that you don't want to keep, and every one of those extra blood gems will somehow end up on that minion, now have no use for. You either have to keep it, or get rid of it, or waste a valuable spell on it to move those gems. We don't want to do that, so definitely be careful of the order you're playing them in. Try to get all those blood gems on Geomagus while there's cards on the board you care about. You know, also one important note, if you have 2 Geomaguses, they won't infinitely bounce blood gems. So if you play one on a Geomagus, it bounce one off another Geomagus, you're not going to get an infinite combo. So say you sold all of your minions on the board except for 2 Geomaguses, they're not going to sit there and ping pong infinitely blood gems. Sorry, you have to play them directly. Ones they play don't count. Snarling Conductor next. This 4/5 Quilboar is at the start of your turn. Discard a spell to gain 4 gold. Remember, blood gems are spells. So hold 1 in your hand, and next turn you have an extra 4 gold. Triple this thing, it's 8 gold. That is pretty good return. Now it's a 4/5 stat line, so it's not doing you many favors in the combat, but extra 4 gold a turn, an extra 8 gold a turn. Triple this fast, that's a big return on your investment. Definitely Snarling Conductor on the right board at the right time, either when you got just enough health where you can afford to take the hits to farm out that extra gold, or if you're just so far ahead you don't care. Snarling Conductor is not a bad investment. Now we have a very important spell, Gem Confiscation. Tier 4, 1 gold. Play 2 blood gems on a friendly minion. It steals all the blood gems from its neighbors. So, you have a couple minions you want to get rid of. Maybe you have a minion you need to die. You will put it next to the minion you want to keep. You will play Gem Confiscation on this minion you want to keep. And then all the blood gems on the minion you need to die or you want to get rid of will move over to the minion you want to keep. Definitely pay attention to your targeting. Make sure your positioning is right on this. Don't steal gems from multiple minions you don't mean to by accident. Try to position this correctly. Either between 2 minions you don't want, or 2 you don't mind getting a lot weaker, because all those blood gems, no matter how many they have, are going to hoover all over to the one that you play this spell on. And this right now is the only way to move blood gems in the game, so make sure you hang on to these if you think you're going to have to move them around. This is definitely worth keeping, because if you have, say, a bunch of blood gems on a useless minion and there's a Blade Collector, a Foe Reaper, a Wildfire Elemental in the shop, you might want to move a ton of blood gems over to one of those so you get a powerhouse all of a sudden, depending how you buffed your blood gems. Tier 5 has some nasty Quilboar also. First, we have the Bongo Bopper. This 4/3 Quilboar is at the end of your turn. Get 2 blood gems and play 2 more on this. So it's going to buff itself at least 2 blood gems. That means if you haven't buffed your blood gems at all, this is really a 4/3. It's a 6/5. Not as bad for a tier 5, right? But also, it's going to add 2 to your hand. So it's generating blood gems for you, which you're going to need a lot of later in the game because you want to move blood gems around as much as possible so you can gain all the stats you can now that you've buffed them a bunch, right? Bongo Bopper is a great value minion. Works with Jakari Enchanter because it's an end of turn effect. Just a good late game Quilboar. Felboar can be a monster. Felboar is a 2/6 demon Quilboar. After you cast 2 spells, consume a minion in the tavern to gain its stats. You've got it. Every 2 blood gems, because they're spells, and all other spells you cast, this will eat something in the shop. So if you have buffed your shop at all, even remotely, and you're generating 5 to 10 blood gems a turn, this thing can get ridiculously big fast and is a lot of fun to watch do its work. It just scales very quickly when you're generating a lot of blood gems. Even if you haven't really buffed your shop, if you're making enough blood gems, that can more than make up for it. And if you make this thing gold, it will get double the stats from the minion you're consuming. And definitely make you think about buffing that shop a little bit while you're trying to just get those blood gems out of your hand. Finally, at tier 5, we have one of the most powerful Quilboar by far, the Transmuatated Bramblewitch. This 4/4 elemental Quilboar is when this attacks, set the defender's stats to 3/3. Only works once per combat. Unless it's gold, then it can do it twice when it attacks. It only attacks once. It's not have wind fear or anything like that, but if it gets to swing again, it will turn the next minion into a 3/3. Is their taunt a 12,000? No, it's a 3/3. Important note about this, though. If you're attacking something that has Divine Shield, while it is now a 3/3, it's just going to pop the shield. Make sure the next minion swinging can just kill the 3/3 and isn't a problem for you. So if you know they're doing this and this is the counter you're going to run, put some throwaway Quilboar next or whatever minion, just to make sure you don't waste one of your big minions or Divine Shield hits on a 3/3. Over at tier 6, we have the Bristlebach next. This is a 3/10 Quilboar. Avenge 2, play 2 blood gems on all your Quilboar. Now this is a combat buff, so remember any blood gems applied during the combat are not permanent, they're temporary buffs, so kiss them goodbye. But if you have a type of board set up where you have a few summons on your board still, you have a couple death rattles, just a couple Quilboar, and your blood gems are buffed up a bit, you can get decent value out of Bristlebach. The old build that used to work with him doesn't really work, so we're not going to talk about that. Might come back one day, but it involves Tough Tusk and taunts and shields for days. It was very annoying and it was kind of irritating. I'm glad it's gone. Bristlebach, not the power it once was, still can work on your board, but more of a passive, you don't depend on it thing anymore. Chargla, this is a tier 6 4/4 Quilboar that can be very effective. At the end of your turn, play a blood gem on your other minions. So it doesn't buff itself, but it's going to buff the other 6 minions on the board. And by the time this touches your board, your blood gems are probably buffed. If they're not, probably should pass on Chargla unless you're really desperate, because giving your entire board a 1/1 buff minus itself isn't going to win you many fights. But if your blood gems are buffed at all, if it's a 5/5, if it's a 10/10 buff, if you have a Drakari Enchanter, because this is an end of turn effect, it'll trigger twice now, that can get significant. You run 2 of these with a Drakari, you get a gold one of these with a Drakari, you get a golden Drakari. You are throwing out so many stats. It just gets ridiculous with how big your board can get with a golden Chargla, with a golden Drakari. Obviously, this is a high rolled scenario. You should be winning and doing very well, but it's a lot of fun to watch play also, to just see your board jumping, just scaling out of control. Next, we have Pokey Thornmantle. This poor thing has been nerfed so many times. I don't know if it's going to be buffed or if they're happy where it is right now, but this is a 6/7 Quilboar that at the start of your turn, start, not end, your blood gems give an extra +1/+1 this game. So it will permanently buff your blood gems at the start of every turn. Does not work with Drakari Enchanter. I want to stress this, does not anymore. It used to, because it used to be end of turn and it was way too strong, but now it does not. It's still a very good Quilboar. It's still kind of what makes you play Quilboar. If you find enough of the other ones, I mean, hey, great. You've got Prickly Pipers for days. You got Moonbacon Jazzers. You can play it easily. But often it's easier to triple into a Pokey. Just have it 4 or 5 turns go by while it's buffing your blood gems and your Charglas are cooking off and you're just scaling by adding 10 blood gems to your hand. And then you're playing them on your Geomagus Roogug. And yeah, your board's all 500 or bigger. Like, hey, goodbye, and as you win the lobby. Pokey definitely is better as early as possible now that it's a start of turn effect, but still can be very good. Do not switch to this if it's super late and you get this, but if you get this early enough and you've got some blood gem generation, you're probably playing Quilboar. Finally, at tier 7 for you Thorum players, we have Sanguine Champion. This 18/3 Battle Cry and Death Rattle, your blood gems give an extra +1/+1 this game. You've heard me right. Battle Cry and Death Rattle with 18 attack. It's tier 7, feels like it should be tier 7. It gives a good long-term effect. You can play it with a myriad of abilities and spells to trigger Death Rattles, to trigger Battle Cries. It works with all the fun stuff, and it's just a monster when you complete it early and you have any health, because your blood gems scale pretty damn fast. And you have this with a Pokey, congratulations. You're in pretty good shape. I think you're going to finish at least top 2. Have a good game. All right, we know the minions, we know the spells, we know the abilities. What's a build look like for Quilboar? How do we know we're playing Quilboar? Well, there's nothing wrong with picking up Quilboar during the game and trying to have a minion here and there because they're strong, or even having a board full of them because you keep finding them. That's fine. But you're not really playing a Quilboar board in my mind until you get Pokey. A Pokey is a start of turn effect. So getting it early is the most important thing. If you find this turn 11 or later, unless your board is completely full of Quilboar, don't waste your time. Even then, you might not have any time left. It might be only 2 of you left, so it might not matter. But if you can get this on turn 8 or 9, you got a couple Quilboar, or you see any in the shop, you definitely can play Pokey. I'm going to say the main pieces of this build are Pokey and Drakari Enchanter. Now, the reason for that is all the really good Quilboar that are going to give you value are all end of turn effects. I know Pokey is no longer an end of turn minion, but all the other minions are. So you definitely want to be able to eke out as much value as you can from this. So the minions I'm going to look for as the main thing that say I'm Quilboar are going to be Pokey and Drakari. What are the minions we're going to find to fill the build out? For me, I'm going to say if we're going end of turn effects, there's going to be 3 things. It's going to be Banner Boar, because It's easy. It's at tier 4. It might already be on your board. Your blood gems are buffed at all. It's already throwing out a bunch of stats, but now Pokey's going to buff it more, and Drakari's going to make it trigger twice. Then it's going to be Bongo Bopper, because Bongo Bopper is going to put 2 gems on itself, put 2 in your hand. You're buffing them because you have Pokey. You've got a Drakari going, so now you're going to put 4 blood gems on it, and you're going to put 4 in your hand. And finally, Chargla. Chargla is going to apply blood gems to every minion except itself. If you have a Drakari, it's happening twice. You've got your Pokey scaling, so it's scaled blood gems twice. And you start to see how it gets completely out of control. You've got Charglas, you've got banner boars, you've got bongos, you've got blood gems flashing all over your screen, and they're scaling, plus whatever scaling you've already done at this point of the game. Obviously, next thing I would like to have if I can is Geomagus. Geomagus is great, because every time a blood gem's played on him, it's going to kick out an extra 1 for you. We've already established the scaling of them, and we're throwing a lot of them around. So Geomagus, you want to position him so he gets as many blood gems put as possible. So next to banner boars, preferably if you can help it. And then any ones that Bongo Bopper generates, put them directly onto Geomagus himself. Finally, there's lots of other optional cute things you can do. I've seen many people use Young Murk-Eye because of the end of turn triggers we're doing. Use gem smugglers to finish your turn. Things like that are cute. That's kind of, if you get lucky and you find those pieces, I don't consider those main pieces of this build or even optional. They're more like alternative niche fun things you can do to really eke out the next level. But I really feel like the main pieces of this build are Pokey, Drakari, then we're gonna go Chargla, Banner Boar, Geomagus, and Bongo Bopper. Those are enough where you basically board's full, you got a cycle slot, you go nuts. Always an option, depending on what your opponents are using, is going to be Bramblewitch, because it is so good at countering everything. So if you're looking for another minion to cycle in, I definitely like Transmuatated Bramblewitch. It completely destroys demon boards, wrecks mech boards pretty bad. Any big stat board, it really gives them a headache. So definitely, I would consider that probably the last optional card I would like to just throw into my Quilboar boards. They're in every lobby with Quilboar, so it's definitely worth going for. Everything else, pretty much optional. Of course, you're gonna have a pair of something that you can't triple. It's messing things up. Never put 2 Drakaris down. They don't do anything extra. They don't stack. Don't waste your time with that. This is kind of the build for me that works with Quilboar right now. That's it. Now we know everything. We know how blood gem work. We know the minions. We know the spells. We know the strategies. We're ready to go. What do you think? Are you happy with Quilboar where they are right now? Do you think I missed something? Please leave a comment below. I am sure I didn't cover anywhere near all the possibilities that are ever in. So please leave ideas for other people, things I might not have thought of or cut for time, because if I listed everything, we'd be here all damn day. Thanks for watching all. I hope you had a good time. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. It helps the channel grow and I really appreciate it. I'll catch you all next time. Later. To the Quilboar tribe. When to use them, how to use them. All these things are important, but definitely knowing how and what. Fucking bird.